everyone, and welcome to another episode of Camp at Home. My name's Miss Allie, and today we're going to be making these really cool plastic bottle chandeliers inspired by Dale Chihuly. These are really cool because they're made from recycled materials. They take only just a few materials to make, and they're really cool because if you hang them up in front of lights like a window, or underneath a lamp, they kind of illuminate, sort of like glass does. So that's what we are going to make today. I'm going to flip over to my art making board and we can get started. So as I get set up here, I just want to take a moment to thank not only the College for Creative Studies, but also General Motors for allowing us to keep making these free online art tutorials. And thank you all for joining me and hanging out, making another really cool, fun episode. And I'm going to keep these here, sort of our inspiration. And to make these chandeliers, we're going to need a few materials. So we are going to need some scissors. We're going to need a hole punch. Scissors, hole punch. We're also going to need some markers, something to decorate with. You can, I have some permanent markers here. You can also use paint markers, or you can use acrylic paint. And of course some plastic bottles. You can use some small ones or full-size one or a combination of both. Plastic bottles like water bottles work great, or pop bottles or juice bottles, and they can be really any size, big, small, large, regular, anything in between. And we're also going to need some string or yarn or fishing line or something to hang them all on. So the first thing that we want to do is actually take our plastic bottles. You want to collect, I say at least 5, but the more that you have, the more interesting they'll look. So I have a few here with me, but I've already started on this my example one, and you can just keep adding to them. That's a really cool thing about it. So you're going to start by collecting them, and you want to let them dry out or somewhat dry out. I actually had this tipped over on a paper towel just to like try and get some more of the water out. You want to rinse them out, especially if there was anything in it other than water. So like especially like juice or milk. And you want to try and get the tag off here. So whether ripping it off or cutting it off or however, you can get it off here. They usually come off pretty easily. All right. So once it's all clean and empty, what you want to do is actually decorate it. So you can choose your colors. Choose a color scheme. And a color scheme is a specific set of colors that we choose to go into a project that we're making. So my color scheme here, I usually say try and stick to around 3 to 4 colors. I have some blues and greens and purples. I sort of have the cool colors. That's sort of my color scheme. So that's what I'm going to stick to. Like I said, I have permanent markers, but if you also could use acrylic paint markers. Someone told me that they've even used nail polish before, and that works. And basically what you're going to do is color your bottle. You're going to pretty much cover the whole thing. You're going to cut the very bottom part off, so don't worry about getting too close to the bottom as you're coloring, but you want to get most of it. And they make sort of a squeaky noise as you start to color on it, especially if you're using markers, you know, and you just want to start adding some. So you can do them all one solid color, and that's fine. You can also add, you know, multiple colors. You could do like alternating, so like blue, green, blue, green. You could have some sort of alternating pattern. You could have a few different ones. They could be in stripes. So however you want to do it. Now this part is what takes the longest part, is actually adding the color to them, which is okay. You know, we know this is going to take the longest part, so we're going to spend some time doing this. Like I said, throwing my bottle. Like I said, painting them. You can do that, or paint markers or permanent markers. Now, if you don't have permanent markers or acrylic paint, something you can do, a trick that you can do, is to take, you know, your water-based markers, color them in, and then spray your bottle with hairspray, and that will sort of solidify your colors. It won't make them move or smudge. So that's sort of a fun tip that I have for you. And another thing, you can just keep moving I always have some sort of paper or something down underneath just so I know I'm not going to get this on the table if it does kind of rub off a little. And that's okay. Okay. So for the sake of time, I know this part takes like the longest. So for the sake of time, I'm actually going to magically jump to a few bottles that I have ready already. And I stuck again with my color scheme. And here you can see I sort of went from light blue to dark blue. And I kind of alternated evenly. And here I kind of had a few different colors. This sort of really lime green, turquoise, blue. Kind of have them all together. And the same thing, I sort of have open spot at the top and open spot at the bottom. And I don't color the whole thing. And you'll see why as we go to cut it. And that'll make sense here in a second. So like if you remember me saying, one thing about doing these is that not only you can choose your colors, but you can also choose the size of your bottles, and that's going to look really cool as we start to put them together. They do not all have to be the same size, so don't worry if you have like a variety of sizes. So to actually cut your bottles, oh, one more thing about color. I know I'm sort of jumping back, but one more cool thing about the color. It's cool that you can sort of see through them. So Dale Chihuly, the artist that we're basing this project off of, he is an American glass sculptor. He makes these amazing glass sculpture chandeliers. They hang in a variety of places, museums, large buildings, and some of his glass is totally opaque, meaning that you cannot see through it. It's like a solid color. But some of it's translucent, meaning that you can see sort of through it, but it has color. You know, and so doing this on bottles really gives that glass feeling. So that's kind of the benefit of using a plastic bottle, other than the fact that we're recycling. So I just want to give you a little background about what we were making. So as we move forward, once it's totally colored and dry, I let this sit a little bit just so I know nothing's going to come off of it. I'm going to squeeze this bottom part just a little bit, that part that I didn't color, and I'm going to take my scissors and I'm going to cut that part off. And this part can now go in recycling. So the next thing I want to do, I'm going to cut my bottle, and I'm going to cut it up in a diagonal motion, because this is what's going to create my spiral, my swirl. So it's almost like keeping your scissors in a straight diagonal upwards when you're just turning the bottle like so. So I always, start a little bit so I can get a little cut, get my scissors in there a little bit, and then just sort of start cutting on a slight diagonal. And I'm turning my bottle as I'm cutting. And it's just going to naturally go into a swirl. This is sort of a noisy part. So if you miss what I said, is naturally just goes into a swirl by keeping it up diagonal and turning my bottle. And it doesn't have to be exactly perfect. Don't worry about that. And when you get towards the top, so you're going to cut it off flat on that top line. So I'm lining it up to that top line, and now I'm just going to kind of cut that part off flat. Okay. And if you have a little remainder, that's okay. So this can be recycled now as well. So now you're left with this spiral. This is what you're left with, this really interesting looking spiral. So the cool thing about this is that it's plastic. It's not like glass or metal. You can stretch it out if you want it to be longer. That could be something that you want to do. Maybe you want it to have a little longer length. So you can stretch it out a little bit, and it'll eventually just sort of start hanging a little bit longer. So sometimes I like to do that with a few of them, and this just helps give a variety of sizes. So once you get them all cut, then what you're going to want to do is take your hole punch. If you don't have a hole punch, you can always use a thumbtack and choose either side, doesn't matter which side. And you're just going to make a hole at the very top there. And you might have to really press it in there. If you don't have, like I said, if you don't have a hole punch, you can also use a thumbtack or even your scissors. You can also bend it over, make a little cut there. And this is just so we have a way to hang it. So this is when your string, your yarn, your fishing line, whatever you have comes in handy. And so I take a good amount of string here. So it's something like that, depending on how many bottles you're planning on making. And I cut, you know, a good amount here. Okay, and so basically you're going to start to thread your plastic bottle pieces through your string. And so now this is where, if you, let's say you have your small bottle and you have your large bottle, getting mixed up there. I always start with the large ones first because that means that the longest ones are going to be in the middle. But it really doesn't matter that much. And so you can start threading it through. Now, because I already have one started from my example from before, I have many bottles here going on. I'm actually just going to add on to this one. That's the really great thing about this project is you can just keep adding on every time you get a new bottle. You don't even, it never has to be finished. If you saw my kind of example, like my hole there was not really cut, or I'm sorry, not the hole. The tie wasn't tied all the way. So I can just continue adding on to it, which is a really cool part of this project, is that it never really has to be done. So I always sort of just loop it in a way, somehow just, you know, add some sort of loop or something, however you can think to tie it, and then hang it up. And it has this really interesting effect. And I'll try and push it back here a little bit. And they can hang down, so you can see here, I have a few, let's see. I'm trying to get to there's the shorter one, and I have a few really long ones. And so you can just keep adding to this. And then, if you remember how I mentioned, you know, since they're sort of see-through or translucent, you can hang them up in front of your window, you can hang them up outside in front of your door, and when the light shines through, it's going to make this really cool effect, almost like stained glass. So it's like making a really interesting chandelier or display. So it kind of can really brighten up any room. It can be really fun. So that is basically how you make these plastic bottle chandeliers, inspired by artist Dale Chihuly, American glass artist. So if you have a chance, go ahead and look up his work. It's very cool. Now, whenever you're done, you want to make sure you clean up, want to make sure everything has caps on it, recycle the rest of the bottle pieces that you're not going to need, and put away any other materials. And then you can hang up your awesome sculpture, take cool pictures of it, and feel free to share it with us. I'd love to see what you made. So I want to say thank you again for joining me today on Cap at Home. Again, my name is Miss Allie, and we made these Chihuly-inspired plastic bottle chandeliers. And just with just a few materials, great project for recycling and learning about a new artist. So thank you for joining me again today. And remember to check out the rest of our videos that we have Monday through Thursday at 1 p.m. and the rest of our video library on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. So I'll see you next week. Thanks for hanging out.